Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes, and this episode is a very interesting about e-commerce and the business solutions in post COVID-19 era. We have an expert and very professional person, Mr. Darin from USA, and he's gonna join with us, and we will discuss about post COVID-19 era business solutions. Hello, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you today?
Yes, I'm fine. Fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Can you please introduce yourself, because I know that you did fantastic jobs with your consulting company. You are solving many problem in North America, and it's really interesting that we're going to introduce these things with World Talent Economy Forum. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Darin Strong. I am here from the United States. I live in the state of New York. I do a consulting business called Be Strong Business Solutions. We strategize with digital marketing strategies. And I've also volunteered in Amy Carrier's classroom here on Facebook to talk about different digital marketing strategies or marketing strategies in general as well, outside of that, to help people grow their business, especially now during the post-pandemic or the COVID time. A lot of things are changing, so businesses are looking to try to change that pivot and get into that right area for you. So.
Mhm. No, excellent. I just want to know, let's say, what the present condition in USA, in North America, and what do you think about next 3 to 5 years business strategy? Because you are very expert on that particular point.
Yeah, so right now, obviously, things are still, in the unknown. There's a lot of unknown characteristics doing with COVID and the pandemic. Some states in the United States are different than others. So each state kind of sets their own guidelines and rules for the businesses to follow. Then it's the businesses' responsibility to try to follow those rules the best their abilities. It has put a lot of, kind of a delay in some businesses, especially in the restaurants, gyms, healthcare, like personal spaces where people go to join and commune, because you have to have social distancing. Outdoor events, music events, things like that have been affected. We talk about tourism. Tourism has been affected in our area. I live in a wine region here, which is called the Finger Lakes wine region. It's a really well-known wine region. They have really well-known wines. They've been affected because people can't travel as far or stay in places, because some of the hotels, the Airbnbs or bed and breakfasts have been kind of reduced in staff or shut down temporarily as well. So there's going to be a lot of change in terms of the way people do business. The other thing is online shopping has increased quite a bit as well due to the pandemic, because people aren't able to get outside or go to stores or restaurants or to local businesses. So they're trying to get products, still available, because people still have needs and wants. But how do you, change your business strategy to accomplish and help them?
Excellent. Like in like in COVID time, actually, many people lose their jobs. Many people actually unemployed. Many countries' economy has a lot of challenges. I think North America, Asia Pacific, we have many things we have to fix together. So, what do you think? What will happen how can we solve these unemployment issues?
So the unemployment issue, it's a really tough issue, and then there's so many different factors that go into that. A lot of it has to do with, making sure everybody is safe and healthy and coming up with guidelines to protect people's health. That's the main issue that you really want to focus on. But also, how do we get back to getting people to work? But I think this pandemic is going to change the way that we used to work before. So that'll create new jobs as we move forward. But I think just because there's so much unknown, it's going to take some time, and we just have to be kind of persistent, but be willing to look at things in a different avenue and learning to pivot to a different direction for our business.
How technology right now played role for solving these issues? Do you have any things to share with us?
Yeah, so technology is going to be a huge thing. Due to this pandemic, it's kind of allowing more and more people who normally wouldn't shop online. They're being kind of forced to shop online, which means that they actually have to learn the technology. It's stuff that's been around for a long time. I was just talking to a colleague the other day. The internet has really been around for about 20 years. It's been around for even longer than that too, but in mainstream, and then in some countries it's fairly new, but it's allowing some of the older generation to learn how to use this. As they experience it, if they have good experiences, then they're willing to come back. So I think having technology or having a strategy to build technology into your business is going to be really beneficial. The other thing that this is forcing is those businesses that never had an online stream are forced to have an online stream now. And then when we go back to our regular pass, they're going to be able to carry that on. So it's going to be an extra, stream of income that they never would have thought about doing because they're forced to. So I think it is good in one way, but in the other way, it's going to take time to learn that and get through all of those processes.
Excellent. I just want to know, even in government taking a lot of initiative to enhance the capacity and developing the skills of the human resources, what your suggestion, what your advice? Because World Talent Economy Forums, we are working as a global think tanks. We working with many developing nations like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia. So what your advice that how they can focus on human resource development?
Yeah, so one of the things that they can do, I mean, everything is like focused on the online world, but there still has to be a back end. There has to be a foundation of people, getting those products, getting those services, and shipping them out or handling them one-on-one. So how do you get those people involved in your business to the online world? That's where that can play into and create new avenues and new, areas of business development that weren't existent before. So it's a way to do that.
Excellent. Mr. Darin, I want to know that, let's say, we are overcoming from this COVID situation, but what we face right now, we find that many people, many organizations, they are not prepared about this kind of things, and they do not have a proper strategies. What your advice for the different corporation, especially NGO and the non-government organizations and corporations, how they take different kind of measures and initiative for handle this kind of situation?
Yeah, so they really need to sit back and figure out what is their strategy in terms of going in and, what are the problems that are out there, and then breaking down each of those problems individually and coming up with specific strategies and coming up with like 3 or 4 different tactics that they can utilize to attack that strategy. A lot of times they just say they want to, do online shipping. Well, how does that work? What are the breakdowns of that? And you really got to have a serious sit-down strategy with the core people that are involved in your business. Even if you're not in a government agency or you're just a small business trying to get started and you have a small team, reach out to them. But the other thing that you can do is to network with other small businesses in your area to come together and come up with best strategies and ideas. I do that locally here in my area. We have a small group. We have about 100, 150 small business owners that are all local entrepreneurs. And we get together just locally to share best practices and strategies with each other, because we all don't have big, huge teams. But if we all come together, we can act as a team and help each other in our own industries that way. So that's one way that you can work within a small setting. But it seems like you have a lot of different ideas, because you can also share ideas and get other viewpoints from other people of things that you may not have thought of or come in. That'll help you with your strategy to progress, especially during these difficult times.
Most important thing is that at present, different universities and other things, they are facing problems, especially for online. Many of them actually not used to with this online educations. How actually online education helps, because you have a very good experience to develop human resources, and what type of skills right now important for the youth community to getting more jobs or getting involved with business?
So the youth, they have really good skills because they're used to using technology, whereas some of the older institutions you're talking about, like schools and universities, they aren't used to doing this online learning, and they're not used to it because it's different. But some of the youth, they're used to growing up. They grew up with some of the talent. I didn't always grow up with technology either. I'm one of the older people. I didn't have technology going through school. We didn't have the internet, any of that. But I had to learn how to do that, and that's one of the things that people are afraid of. Is they think that because they don't know, but this is all new to everybody. And that's one thing that you got to keep that in mind, that this technology stuff, the live video that we're doing here, we wouldn't have been able to do this like just 5 years ago, really. It would have been very difficult to do. There wasn't those availabilities. So it's still new to everybody, and everything is just getting started. So just be really persistent and be willing to try and do things that are different, that haven't been done before, because that's what's going to change moving forward, is new things that are going to come out of this.
Excellent. Beside that, I want to know how actually industry should collaborate with academia. Because academia has different perspective, industry has different requirements. How do we minimize this gap?
That's a good question. That's going to be tough because you have the academia, they have their rules and restrictions and guidelines, and here in the States, we have universities and colleges, but in order for things to change, they have to go through this procedure in order to get approval, in order to make changes. And a lot of times that procedure can take so long, whereas when you're in business, businesses have to be able to pivot quickly. As you know, like just this year in 2020, if you were in business in January of this year, you had to pivot as of March. You had to make a change within 3 months. If you're in the academia world, that change could take a whole year before you can make that change because they have to get approval, they have to get all of these things. So I think there really just needs to be some open communication and willing to change what old way was to what the new way was and be able to make that quick adjustment, especially with technology or things that happen quickly in here for you.
Mhm. Excellent. I think audience start to observing your show. Noor Fazrin from Malaysia. She said, "Greetings from Malaysia. This topic will surely help the business student as well as entrepreneurs. Thank you." Yes, I know that you have an involvement with the entrepreneurial initiative and other things. How entrepreneurs should take preparation right now? How they play? How they and what do you think in this crisis moment, how actually entrepreneurs build up their business and handle this crisis period?
Yes, I think this is a great time for entrepreneurs. And going back to the topic that I talked about is being an entrepreneur allows you to be flexible and allows you to change quickly. So for any of those that are entrepreneurs out there, be willing to start something, but evaluate as you're going along, and don't be afraid to make some changes if you feel that you're going off to a different path. Follow that path for a little bit. If it doesn't work, then pivot back and then come back to where you want to go. But I think this is a great time because there's so much unknown. There's no right way or wrong way. I always tell people that, like, if you're baking, right, and you have all of the ingredients, I can give you all of the ingredients in the world. You still have to bake and put those ingredients together to create something when you're baking. So it's not always having all of the ingredients. Not everybody has the answers. It's also about having the answers, but also implementing those answers as well. So you have to be able to implement them just as well as having those. So a lot of that comes with trial and error. Don't be afraid to fail. You have to try a couple different things. That's how you're going to get better. And especially during these times, I think that's where entrepreneurs can really expand and come out of this and create new jobs, new businesses, and new paths for people to follow.
Excellent, excellent. Beside that, I want to know, like example, how we should work together from the global community. World Talent Economy Forums, we are collaborating with 122 countries around the world. So how we can work together? What's your message? How different cultures and different countries, when they involve together, what's the how they can grow their productivity, how they can show their performance, what's the way of doing work together?
So the best way, I mean, that's the thing. When you have so many different cultures and communities, everyone has different rules and laws. I mean, just for me, myself, I'm here in the United States. We have 50 states that make up the United States, and each state has their own rules and laws that we all have to follow. So just working within our state. Now, if you go expand that to other countries have their own rules and laws that you have to follow. And everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses. But if you can come together to share those experiences, what are those issues? How can we work around? Many times people are saying, well, I have this problem here, I have this problem here. That's great. As an entrepreneur, those are the problems. What are the solutions? What can you do? Like, what's within your control that you can move forward with? And that's what I think you have to focus on, is what can you control? Try not to control the things you don't have control over. Like you might have your own government and they have their own rules. You can't really change what they're thinking, but what you can control in your own house that's how you're going to move forward.
Excellent. I want to take a questions from audience. Mohammad Shoail Rana, he said, "Hello, sir. How does the social insurance system and the tax burden of economic activity affect business and innovations?"
So that's something I'm not real familiar with, of how the social insurance system works. There are certain taxes and rules, and it does affect businesses, on a large scale. So that's things that businesses really need to work into, and it's based on your country and what communities you're at. Even here in the United States, as I said, each state is different based on what state you're in,
Mhm.
and it can have different effects on those aspects. And those are things that you have to think about as a business. But some of those things you don't have control, because those are, these are our mandates. You have to follow these. Okay, well, those are, but what can I control? So try to focus on what you can control instead of what you can't, and then how you can come up with a solution to make your business better or grow.
Excellent. I want to know more about social entrepreneurship. How you want to advise, because in Asia Pacific we have many social entrepreneurs. So
Mhm.
what your advice for them? And most importantly, you have a very good and strong collaborations with e-commerce as these things. Even Malaysians and Malaysian government, they really focused on right now with this e-commerce and this kind of internet related business, and they are trying to helping different community, even let's say Sunway groups, Alibaba, they are also trying to help this local community. So what your advice for this social business, or and as well as how they can integrate it with technology?
So in terms of social business, what kind of social businesses are you like referring to? Like the social entrepreneurs that are just like the influencers or the internet marketers, things of that nature?
Actually, social entrepreneurs means,
Or,
example, those who are engaged with, let's say, different kind of small business, how
Mhm.
they can integrate it with this e-commerce and online business, and actually how online business can help this kind of small business micro initiative.
Okay.
Those, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, a lot of things, everyone's trying to go to the online world and expand. One of the great things about doing that is creating good content to share with customers. You want to, many people are just trying to sell all the time, but many times you can use the online platforms to educate the customer. Why is it your product or service is better than another one, or why is it just as good? What can it solve? And those are the kind of things that you need to kind of create online to make people feel more comfortable, because usually people will do business with people that they know, they like, and they trust. And that takes time to build up. And everybody's always looking for that quick, what's that one thing that's going to solve everything? Well, there's not. It takes multiple things all together, just like a vehicle, a car. If you take a car out there in the world, you have to have gas, you have to have air in your tires, you have to have fluids in it in order for it to run. There's all these mechanical things that make it move. If you don't have air in your tires, you can't make your car move. If you don't have gas in it, you can't make it move. Same thing, so there's multiple moving parts. Same thing with a business is, what are the multiple parts that you need to get it to come together to make it move forward? Even if it moves forward just a little bit, that's a better step than just being stuck still. So that's what we need to work on, is how do we move that needle just a little bit?
Excellent. I want to take another questions from audience. Onika Shams, she said, "Hello everyone. This pandemic has changed many business model. Some business person become frustrated. What is your advice for those who are really feel insecure? Thanks."
That's a good question. It is very tough, and people are struggling right now with this pandemic. It is, forcing people to look inside themselves. If you are feeling insecure, the one thing I always tell people is try not to be too insecure. As I said, many of this online world is all new to everybody. It's not like it's been around for many, many generations. It's still new, and it's always expanding and changing. But you just got to kind of be willing to, we always talk about, practicing. Like the best, violinist in the world didn't start out as the best violinist. They practiced many, many hours and failed many, many times before
Mhm.
they became the best violinist. And that's what we don't see. You don't see those hours of frustration, or how they learned and changed to become the best. And that's the same thing in business. Is a lot of times you have to try things out and fail at them, and then proceed and keep moving forward. So just try to remind yourself, just keep moving forward, take one day at a time, just keep going a little bit at a time, the best that you can.
Excellent. Like, you are coming up with one of the idea about failures. Actually, how failures help entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Failures are part of life. Every human, doesn't matter where you're from, right? When we were all born, how many of us could walk?
Mhm.
None, right? We all had to stumble. We crawled first, or some people crawled. Some people didn't crawl. They actually took a couple steps and they fell. That's a failure. But how many times did that happen before you actually began to walk? And then once you began to walk, you couldn't run right away, right? You had to learn to run. So these are all things. The same thing goes in business. It's anything that's in the world. It all starts with just beginning with that little bit, but you have to fail along the way before you can become successful. And that's anything that you do. Even when we began writing, when you first began to write, no one knew how to write when you were a baby. You had to learn and you had to fail many times and you had to practice. That's that practice. The practice is the failure. And we sometimes in humanity, we resonate failure with something that's negative or bad. When in reality, you have to fail in order to, to proceed and go forward.
Excellent. One point, like innovation is very important, and in and this present world's academia, I want to say that they have to help their student more on innovations. They have to support them how they can innovate different kind of technology, different kind of solutions and other things. So how do you want to encourage these innovations? How do you want to support these innovations, and how it works? Is there any strategy? Is there any North American perception, because they have Silicon Valleys and many interesting innovations? What you want to advise?
Yeah, so during I said to you, you had Silicon Valley, which was the area for all innovation, internet, but that's actually kind of expanded out, and people are realizing with the expansion of the internet and technology, it's allowed people to kind of expand out into other areas. The other thing is, working from home. This post-pandemic, this has allowed people, they're starting to move away from the large cities, because you have to live in a large city in order to work for a big corporation. Well, now with remote working, you can kind of work wherever you feel comfortable. So if you're not comfortable living in a large city, but you can still work from your home, technology is allowing you to create those new positions and allowing you to live a more fulfilled life. And you can live in multiple areas. You can have, live out in, somewhat of a rural area if you want to. You don't have to necessarily be in a large city if you don't like to have that environment around you. So I think it's really going to, have a little bit of an impact on it, but you just have to open up and see what's out there for you.
Excellent. Humaira Tanzila, she said, "Hello, sir. We are watching and enjoying your this session. Thank you for your time." So excellent. I think that audience really enjoying your sessions. Beside that, like what your predictions? What will happen next few years? Let's 5 to 10 years for this.
I'm not really good at making predictions, but I do see that there are going to be some changes out there, just with technology and especially this work from home. I think it's going to open up a lot more new doors for people. But I think there's still going to be some changes to that, because there's a lot of inner dynamics right now. Some of the people here in the United States are working from home, but they also have their kids that are at home trying to learn online classrooms. And so that's taken away from it. So again, going back to the failures, you're learning and failing all at the same time while you're proceeding. It will get better. There will be new strategies. You're going to come up with new techniques. It's just like when you create a habit. You have to do the habit over and over and over before it becomes like kind of second nature to you. So I think one of the things that's going to happen is there are going to be some changes in the dynamics of business, but you have to be willing to open up and look at things differently than you used to in order to take advantage of those. But there are all going to be quite a bit of changes, I think, here in the next few years.
Excellent. So beside that, I want to know more about the present US conditions and what's going on.
Yeah, so I mean, present U.S. conditions, as I said, many people are working from home. Some people still have gone back to work, but now with schools getting back in session, they have kids that are home. And if you have a young kid that's like 5 years old, this is going to be a big, huge learning, because they're sitting in front of a computer screen trying to learn, when at that age, they need to have more interaction. But if you're a parent, you can't be at work and interact with your child and their home learning. So that's going to have a big effect, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years as well, is how is that going to transition with those younger students and their social skills, because the parents are focused on work and it's distracting from them. So that's a whole nother dynamic that's going to be, having to work out. And again, it's a trial and error. So this is the first year. So something new. We've never done it before. They're trying to learn that. And then the teachers are trying to learn how to, do online classrooms where they have online class students, but they also have students that are in their classroom too. So
Mhm.
they're doing both. And so you're kind of having one person doing two jobs. You really should have two teachers, one to teach online and one to teach the kids that are in the class, not have them have their attention in two directions. It's kind of like the same concept. If I'm talking to you here, but then I have another computer over here to my side and I'm talking to somebody over here, it's taken away from
Mhm.
and that's what we're asking those teachers to do now. So that's a whole nother dynamic
Mhm.
in itself. So
Mhm.
it's going to be very interesting to see what happens as
Mhm.
we progress through the end of this year and as things open back up, or if they close back down again due to the COVID. So
Mhm. Excellent. There are actually many organizations right now. Many organizations, they are actually using traditional methods. They are focusing on more traditional activities and other things. So, for them, what's your advice? How they can move forward? How they can overcome from this challenging situation?
yeah, so for some of those that are still doing the traditional methods and due to the different laws, that's going to be again. I always like to refer back to what are some things you can control? What can you do to make it comfortable for people, or stay within the rules and the guidelines that are given to you by your government or wherever you're at? If you're in an institution or a company, they have certain guidelines for you to follow. What can you do rather than focusing on, oh well, we can't do this anymore, we can't do that anymore. Well, we understand that. What can you do? That's, I think, is going to be the most important thing, is really focusing in on what can you do and how can you make that work for the current situations.
Mhm. Mhm. Interesting, interesting. So, like, do you have chance to visit like in Asia before? What countries and what areas you visited before?
Yep. So I've never been able to transfer, and visit any Malaysia. I've been here in the United States, Canada. I've been down to, like the Dominican Republic in times before, and Mexico, but nothing really across any of the large seas. I've always wanted to, but I haven't been able to travel that far yet.
Yes, yes, understand. Like, what do you want to see about these Asian markets? What your observations? Even USA and China has little bit of tensions, but I want to know, like, what's the futures according to your prediction and your strategical analysis and research? Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of like the Asian markets, like what are some of the things that are the struggles of those businesses there? That's what I want to try to understand. What is it that you're trying to do, or what are your struggles? What are your things that hold you back? And then that way we can kind of communicate together. What are some other solutions and how can we help you move forward? But you got to understand what the whole issues are. What are the problems? What are those issues there first? Then we can come up with solutions to help you move forward. That's what I would like to know more, because I'm not there every day. I don't know what the situations are, and everyone has their own situations. Even here in the United States, like I said, each individual state has their own guidelines and rules that you have to follow. And sometimes you have to take it into your business. Is it going to be worth you to go through over here where I have to go through all of these guidelines? Whereas if I just stayed here, I may not have to go through all those guidelines, and it'll be a little bit more efficient for my business to grow here. Then I can always look at that at a later time. So it's really a personal, in its one-on-one, and in each individual solution or situation can be different.
Mhm. Excellent. I want to add one question from audience. Araf Mehraj, his question is that, hello sir, it's a nice discussions. How it make academic relevant and academics more attractive on the labor market?
So how to make academic more attractive on the labor market, huh? Um, so really, I don't know. Like here in the United States, our academy, like in our educational system, as I said, it's very slow changing. So I know, like, when you do have education, but it's for me, education is always a constant learning experience. It's not always just when you're in school. When you get out in the labor force, there's always that learning. It's that trial and error and that failure that I always talk about. You have to experience, and you have to have those things. You can't just come out of academia and be an expert if you've never actually attempted and used those actions. Just like I said, in a baking, I can give you all of the ingredients to make the best cake in the world, but if you've never actually done it, you're going to fail the first time you try it. before you actually do it. So you got to get those experiences and try and use actual tactics rather than just theory. So a lot of times people think of academia as just theories and strategies, but how did you implement them and what were the results that came out of those implementations for you? And how can you communicate that to the real world and to the labor market to, allow them to do that?
What do you think? Even in the industry, they have to do more, help to more academia to involve with industrial research, and they have to help them that this is my demands. I want to. I have 100 jobs. For this kind of people, and this is the skill matrix, and if they follow this kind of skill matrix, then we can help them and we can give them jobs. What your advice, because still I think this world is struggling in between academia and these things. On the other hand, many universities and other peoples and the governments and the corporation, they do more focus on entrepreneurs, and if we focus on the startups and these things, I want to say many people are not successful in this entrepreneurial initiative. So it's create little bit of unstable condition. Even in COVID situation, everybody need to build some business. What your advice? How we can relate these things in a proper way, in a proper strategic way?
Yes, I think, one of the things in terms of incorporating, the workforce and the workforce development with academia is getting the academia, as I said, they really need to become more involved in their local workforce areas. And how can they help each other? Because they do complement each other. You have to have a strong workforce that's there, but you also have a good academia or a strategy to train that workforce to do the skills that you want. And I see a lot of times that there's two different separations. You always have the academia that's trying to push for one thing, but the labor force wants to push another thing, but they really need to come together. And I don't know how it is in other countries or where that is, but I see it sometimes here in the United States where we have our academia, they have their own, strategies or what they're trying to work for, but then the business is trying to do this over here, but they're not coming together to say, how can we help and solve the whole solution as a whole? They're trying to work on their own problems individually. So I think that would be an issue, is trying to get the people together that are making those decisions, and how can they work together?
We want to learn more about North American context, how this ecosystem works, their industry and their academy. What do you want to share with us?
So I mean, there's a big difference. Sometimes it depends. The academy or academic area, like with the universities, they're very, very important in terms of training the labor market. But there's also some people that are just teaching basic general skills to people that aren't able to transfer over to the workforce. So that's where some people feel that sometimes education isn't as valuable to them because they're not learning anything that's skillful, but then there's others that are. And there is a big disconnect, though, as I said, and there needs to be a better understanding of, what are the jobs that are in the area, and then how do you train to make those jobs, or to make those jobs filled with qualified candidates. But the other thing is, I see a lot of times, though, the workforce, like the companies want people that are already trained. But if you don't have that training available because it's something new, like right now we're going through the pandemic, there's very few people that are going to be trained in all this media and internet and social media, because you kind of learn as you go. There's not like a formal training program. So sometimes the businesses are going to have to learn that they got to bring people in and train them a little bit on the job too. But I don't think that there's that correlation sometimes for some people.
Excellent. I want to take another question from audience. His name is Mr. Shumon. He said, hello, sir. What are the methodological difference in the processing of testing economic efficiency for small and large business entities?
Okay. So, yeah, so testing the economic deficiencies in small and large, there's many, many, many different ways that you can go about that. Obviously, on a small scale, I work with a lot of smaller businesses in particular. The hard thing with being small, and I mean small, like if you have like under 50 to 100 employees, sometimes you don't have the resources as a small business in order to efficiently, evaluate what's going on. You're so busy in your day-to-day operations that you don't get to evaluate it and then make changes. Whereas a large corporations, you have much more flexibility because you have large talent pools. You have larger groups that you can provide. You have specific areas. As it went back, you could have just one person doing a specific project, or you can have a team of people working on a specific area. Whereas when you're in a small business, you might have one person trying to do 3 different projects all at one time.
Mhm.
So trying to evaluate that and then just breaking it down and keeping it simple is going to be the best efficiencies and the methodologies. Always using your SWOT analysis on pretty much everything you do. If you haven't done a SWOT analysis, that's taking your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. So
Mhm.
SWOT. And that's a good way, is getting people together and you pick a topic and you do a SWOT analysis on it. What are our strengths about this? What are our weaknesses about this? What are the opportunities that we could have for this? And what are some of the threats that are going to prevent us from doing this, or our competition? And you jot all of those down in a screen. So you get together with people and you set 4 different boards, and you all just elaborate and shoot out ideas, and then you go through those and you break them down, and then it gives you a better overall situation of what those are. And then you can come up with effective strategies and how do you overcome them? How do you use your strengths to overcome some of those weaknesses? Or how do you, get a new employee that will help you with some of those weaknesses that are in your area that you don't know about?
Mhm. Excellent. There is a questions from audience. Before that, I want to ask you, because I want to take this question first. Nice discussions on business solutions. Hello, sir. What are the problems and the thesis proposed in the field of good governance in business?
Good governance in business, huh? Um, I'm not quite sure what he means by good governance in business. Does he mean like the government intervention in business, or just a good
Okay,
intentions of
what
business?
what I understand, because this is from the different cultures, so that's
Yeah.
that's why they are come up with the different things. First thing first, the thesis proposed means, like, what is the proposal? Actually, World Talent Economy Forums, we do research, but example, today he is an expert from industry. He has more knowledge on industrial things. So dear audience, if you can come up with the industrial questions, then it's a helpful. On the other hand, good governance in business, good governance in the business, what do we mean according to Asian cultures? Like example, government has to give lot of incentives, example in the COVID period, for a small medium enterprise. This is
Mhm.
one of their duties and responsibilities of the good governance. Maybe if you can share your North Americans point of view or American context, they will be uh, really happy and they can learn this point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So good governance. So governance does have an important role in terms of like so here in the United States, businesses are taxed in certain taxes that they have to pay to the government in order to stay in business. Taxes can have a big, huge impact, especially on small business, because that's a tax that you have to pay to the government, but it takes away from your daily operational cost to either pay your employees or to pay your suppliers or to pay your electricity and your utilities, things of that nature. So having a good understanding with governance. So here in the United States, it's really, we try to limit in terms of business how much government has control over business, because that's going to allow for more freedom and expansion, but also governments needs to give guidelines. So
Mhm.
governance needs to give guidelines that people have to follow, so that way you don't have businesses that do things illegally or unethically to grow as well. So you need to have that balance, and I think governance has a good, balance there to give guidelines to keep everybody in line.
Mhm. Excellent. Beside that, I want to know, let's say in present situation, as the good governance and these things comes, how actually corporate can play a role with their corporate social responsibilities. If example, let's say there are many big corporations around the world. Beside that, we know now 70% of the business actually small business.
Mhm.
Small business have a lot of challenges. How we can create a better ecosystems with the collaborations of corporations and the small business, how we can work together, especially in the COVID period. Even how government can support these ecosystems, or they can collaborate with this ecosystem.
Yeah, so That's a good point. So even here in the United States, we have big corporations that are actually growing here in the pandemic time. Again, it goes back to some of those governance and those rules and guidelines where one of the things that we talk about here is with small businesses, as you make say, almost 99% of the jobs that are here in the United States are come from small businesses. Only 1% come from the large corporations that you hear about on a daily basis. So that's the difference there. Most people work for a small business. But as a small business, you have all these guidelines that you have to go through that the big corporations don't have to follow along. They're still open. They didn't have to close their doors. So there has to be a balance there that you have to treat each entity equally. So I think that's going to be a big thing moving forward too. But how can the local governments then help those small businesses, as you said, with either different rules and guidelines and things like that they can expand on? So it'll be important to help them grow.
Mhm. Excellent. There are actually more questions from audience. Can I take? Yes. Okay. There is yes, Muhammad Shahinul Islam. Great discussions. Why is the importance of the correlations analysis between the stock market valuations and the economic situation of the business entities growing?
So why is there analysis between the stock market valuation and economic situation of the business entities, huh? So, I mean, that's just in general, that's kind of out of my realm. I'm not really involved in the stock market or the big corporations, things of that nature. But just from my own personal perspective and opinion, they're always talking about, the stock market because that's the forefront. And that's the main thing that they can focus on. You don't really see the balance sheets of small corporations because they're privately owned. The only thing that they can elaborate on is these large corporations because that's all public information. It's out there. People are involved with them. You can buy the stock, so you own stock in that business or company. So there is a correlation that they try to relate that to the business, but again, that's only a part of it. As we said, almost 95% of the jobs that people work for are through the small businesses that aren't even recognized on the stock market. So it has no correlation in the large scope of things. But I also think that a lot of times people rely too much on what they see in the mass media, because mass media, I'm not a big proponent of mass media. I think it's kind of controlled. They kind of force you with what they want you to hear. So you have to kind of do your own investigations, research, and understanding of what those numbers mean when they talk about them.
Excellent. I want to take another question, Mohammed Sohail Rana. He want to ask you, in fourth industrial revolution, does the development of big data technology and other technology generate new business management concept?
So big data technology, I think some of it may, but as I said, as we move forward, I think there's going to be more development also in some of the logistics and the core foundations of how those moving pieces work. Yes, the big data is going to be important in terms of generating, different analysis of industries. But I think there'll be a change in other industries too of how we do the business. It's going to make things more efficient. Kind of the same way that when the telephone first came out, that made businesses a little more efficient and it changed the way that things went. But then you still had to have the infrastructure and people answering phones and things of that nature behind the scenes. So there will be multiple ways that it's going to help.
Excellent. I want to more focus on actually e-commerce because what we understand in the COVID period, because we have to maintain social distancing and the lockdowns and these things happening everywhere. So how actually e-commerce help us to grow our business, and especially in the COVID period, how the traditional business organizations can involve with more this kind of business, and they can grow in this situation.
So e-commerce is a great thing, I think. If you think about it, like in terms of marketing, if you were a small business owner in a small little town and you only sold to those people that were in your town, say you have 100,000 people in your small little area, the thing that e-commerce allows you to do is now it allows you to grow that area at an easier pace. So now instead of just going for that small little town, you can do 5 little towns within your area that you can broadcast out and expand your services to a little more economically because of e-commerce or the media. And then even if you want to expand out there, you can go to other countries. So if you're trying to reach out, you can expand out to other areas that you never would have been able to do at a much more affordable rate. But it does take that learning curve of how do you do that. And as I said, there's always not one straight answer. It's a lot of a lot of little things, trying this and trying that, and then evaluating it and seeing what works best for your business, because each business is going to be different.
Excellent. Beside that, if we move to the North American context, to the Asian context, because Asia has a huge populations, this is opportunity for the business. On the other hand, skill development is very important because they have many unemployed people as well. So what is the shortest period of time, let's say next 6 months, do you have any suggestions, your advice or your guidelines on any of the content they can follow for developing their skills, and they can sharpen their skills and they can involve with the job markets?
Yeah, so there's a lot of free resources out there on the internet. For example, we're going through Facebook right now. Facebook has their own platforms of learning how to do a business page, how to do Facebook ads. They offer free videos on there. You don't necessarily have to pay for them, but there are free resources that you can utilize and follow through to learn skills that you can expand to help. You talk about e-commerce. A lot of that has to deal with Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, and then also Google. Google also offers free online training tools that you can utilize. So there's a lot of free resources out there for you to do, but you got to put the time in, and then also to start implementing some of those things on your own scale. That way you can go to a job, or if you can even work with organizations and say, hey, I'd like to just volunteer and learn. How can I get involved with you? This is a great way to do, especially with the working from home, because you can do a lot of these things from your own home as long as you have an internet connection to communicate and share and collaborate with others. So it's a great way that you can learn and do at the same time.
Excellent. Besides that, I want to know, in the COVID periods, actually, yes, work from homes and this kind of online platform, people can sharpen themselves and everything, very interesting. So what do you want to say about the healthcare systems? And do you have any advice on guidelines? Because we observing from every countries, Malaysia actually in the COVID period they're doing well, but if we compare other developing nations like Indonesia, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, so Vietnam doing good, very well in the COVID periods. How we can take some good business strategy to improve our healthcare systems, or what your advice for that?
So I don't really know much about your healthcare system, so I really couldn't give you accurate information of how you can advance that. Our healthcare system here in the United States is very complicated as it is. So I'm not really sure how to help you guys in terms of what you have for your healthcare system there, or what strategies they need. I know you have very good healthcare, but I'm not real, versed on what those guidelines would be. So.
I think audience come up with one of the idea of blockchains. Hello, sir. What are the industries that embrace blockchain technology already? Do you think it is difficult on future business? Okay, it is very effective on future business. Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah. So blockchain is an interesting concept, and I think it's got some, validity to it. It is still very new. They talk about blockchain and mostly in like cryptocurrencies and things of that nature with transfer of money. But I think blockchain as a whole, as a fundamental whole, is also going to have some technological advances to help businesses in the future. So that's going to be one area that where innovation and the people that are more involved in that, I think you're going to see some changes, I think, in the next few years with that coming out too, to help businesses. But what they are, I don't know. I'm not involved with the blockchain itself, but I do think there is some validity in how that uses in the fundamentals of that system.
Most important thing is building global community, or building in between business in between their community. How the entrepreneurs and the business organizations, they can building their community, and what the business solution you want to offer from your organization for them.
So I mean, it really depends on the situation. There's no one, right or wrong answer. A lot of it's going to be some trial and error in terms of implementing some stuff. And as I said, each business, everyone's always looking for that, what's one way that we can do this? Well, what works for your business may not work for another business. You really got to see what your strengths, your weaknesses are, and then, kind of evaporate and control, what those things are that you can advance your business in.
Mhm, mhm. Excellent. What your advice for the youth community? Because World Talent Economy Forums, we have engagement with many youth community and the youth peoples. What do you want to advise for them?
Yeah, so within the youth community, the main thing is really just start reaching out and learning from someone. See if you can find a mentor or someone that you can learn from as well. But learn from, that's the other thing is I think us as some of the older generations need to incorporate the youth into some of our business groups. It's always good to have a different perspective coming from that youthful person that's coming in. And I don't think enough youthful people are given the opportunity to elaborate or collaborate with other people in organizations because they think that they aren't experienced, they don't really know, but they have a point of view that is different from ours. So that's really valuable. I think if we can get them more involved, then it'll benefit everybody. And
Okay. Beside that, I want to know more about North American cultures, North Americans' environment, and other things you want to share with our audience. I think they will be, they have more interest about these Hollywoods, these cultures, and other things. But what you want to share about the family cultures and the other things about the North America? Yes.
yeah. So there's a lot of different cultures here in North America as well. Don't always believe everything that you see on the internet. As they say, sometimes the internet is everybody's highlight reel. There's always the back end of things of what goes on to that. Same thing with like when you're learning. So whatever you guys are interested, if you guys have questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them. There's a lot of variety out there, but people have those stereotypicals of the Americans and what goes on. But many of us are just like normal people. We live in small little rural areas, or you live in a large city, but we have some of the same daily struggles that everybody else has as well.
Mhm, mhm. Interesting, very interesting. So, what's your concluding remarks for today's sessions? What do you want to say about this World Talent Economy Forums? We basically, World Talent Economy Forum, Asia Research and Development Institute, and Al Noor Academy Saradia Barad, we are working together. We are trying to build up our community in the global arena. So, we are getting a lot of support from the different organizations and different brilliant people like you. We need more talented people like you, those who can contribute. And we are also sharing all of your interviews and your concept with the local community in Malaysia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, many more countries. So this is our objective. We want to create some knowledge-based platforms. I know that already you are developing many interesting things from USA. So what your and anybody's you want to watch or observe our activities in WT forums, YouTube channels, they can. And we have our Facebook page. I think there are thousands of people from different countries. They are joining us today, and this is our actually objective. We want to create a knowledge-based community like you, and we want to make more collaborations with the people like you. So, what your concluding remarks for today?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the best thing is really just to start collaborating with each other. We're all from different, environments. We all have our own struggles. We have different dynamics in each of our different countries, but really understanding what some of those dynamics are going to be, and then working together and supporting each other. Understanding that sometimes you're going to stumble along the way as you're growing. Either if you're starting out just brand new as a new entrepreneur, or you're trying to get started, understanding that you have to take those first steps and be willing to fall. Just make sure you get up after every time you fall. That's going to be the main thing, and just to keep moving forward and try not to allow. Try not to get down. Someone asked about, the pandemic and being down on things. You're going to get people that are going to, say negative things to you. Try to surround yourself with other positive people. And that's what we do here. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get people that are looking for positive results. And that's who you want to surround yourself with. Take a look at the people that you surround yourself with, make sure they're good people and they have good intentions, and they have the same intentions as you do moving forward. And a lot of times you can just create your own little circle of people to help you move forward. I did that even here locally in my area. We just have local small people. We don't have everybody included, but we have a good core foundation, and we all support each other through the good times and the bad. So that's the main thing is trying to find those people and finding your tribe. I always like to call them. And those are the people that are going to help you support you in the long run. And that's going to make you have a longer and more fulfilling life.
Mhm. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is actually very interesting discussions. I think people from different countries, they are also joining today, and they have a lot of questions. Thank you, audience, those who come up with your questions and idea and models. And this is very important for World Talent Economy Forums. And you observe, and definitely we're gonna bring more interesting audience speaker like Mr. Darin, and hope in the future we do a lot of policy discussions. We do a lot of interesting corporate levels panel discussions. So we want to invite you more in World Talent Economy Forums. Hopefully you will enjoy and you will connected with the many interesting person from different countries. Yes, yes.
Yep.
Thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure being here with you guys.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for your valuable times and everything. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, okay, bye-bye. Take care,
Bye-bye.
take care.
All right.
Okay.